You suffer worrying about what might happen. And then if it does happen, you suffer again. And if it doesn't happen, then you suffer through that worrying for no good reason. So worrying is, again, much easier said than done, but it doesn't do you any good. So staying in the present moment and appreciating what you've got, appreciating the little touch of the hand or the cuteness or the smell of the baby or whatever, those little things.
Welcome to another powerful episode of Mama Mabel's Caregivers podcast, the place where untold caregiving stories are brought to light and compassion meets truth. Today's episode is not just a conversation, it's an eye-opener. When your child enters the NICU, you're thrown into a world of machines, decisions, and uncertainty. But what happens behind the scenes? What aren't parents told? And how do you survive it? Not just as a caregiver, but as a human being. That's what we're diving into today with our incredible guest, Julie, a master's prepared pediatric and neonatal nurse practitioner with over 3 decades of experience caring for the tiniest, most vulnerable patients in some of the busiest hospitals from New York to Boston. Julie's seen it all: the adrenaline, the heartbreak, the miracles, and the medical politics that most families never hear about. Her journey eventually led her away from Western medicine and into traditional Chinese medicine, opening her first acupuncture practice in the U.S. Virgin Islands. She's also the author of A Parenting Revolution and passionate storyteller, weaving human emotion into gripping accounts from inside the NICU. From publishing in pediatrics to medical mission trips in Brazil and Mexico, Julie's lived experience is rich, raw, and deeply human. If you're a parent, caregiver, or simply want to know the truth about pediatric care, this episode is for you. So sit back, take a breath, and prepare for an unforgettable look inside the NICU. Let's get into it. I'm so excited to have you on today. Podcast family, this is going to be a great episode, so please listen in. Please make sure to share this with loved ones, with friends, with anyone you know who may benefit from this episode on today. So today's topic is called Inside the NICU, What No One Tells Parents About Pediatric Care. And so Julie Hatch is actually a nurse practitioner, and she is full of a wealth of knowledge and experience. So we're going to go into that, and we're also going to aim our focus on the caregiving side and helpful information that parents or loved ones that are taking care of children can learn from this. So
Great.
Let's just get right on into it. Yes.
Sounds
So Miss Julie, please tell me, how did you get started into nursing?
Well, many years ago, I went to nursing school in New York City. And when I graduated from college with my bachelor's in nursing, right out of school, I went to interview for a job at the New York hospital, and they were opening a new pediatric intensive care unit. And I knew I wanted pediatrics. I knew I wanted intensive care. But you're told when you get out of school that you're supposed to go and do adult med surg. You don't go into any specialties. You go and do 2 years, and you learn you get into the grunt work of stuff. So this woman, this recruiter said, well, we need to staff this new intensive care unit, and we want to train our nurses from the get-go before you develop any of your own bad habits, which makes total sense. So I took the leap, and I went and I just started in pediatric ICU, and I never left pediatrics. Neonatal was part of pediatrics, and I never left ICU. It was one of the best decisions that I made, but also the best opportunities. That woman said, come on and do this, where everybody else was saying, no, you got to do med surg. So anyways, that's where it all started.
So what drew you into that?
I just
to pediatrics?
I've just always liked pediatrics. I don't know. I like babysitting. I had a younger brother, but I just liked kids. I was a I just liked kids. I think the kids are refreshing. They have a different outlook than adults do. They're fresher in a good way.
Awesome. That is so awesome. Thinking about just working in the pediatrics unit and working with children who were dealing with all types of illnesses, are there various stories that come to mind or one that really resonates with you or really touched your heart?
Certainly, I spent more time in the neonatal ICU, so I can speak to that a little bit better. And that was more recent. The pediatric ICU was quite a few years ago. But yes, I mean, it's in my, I remember pediatric ICU so well. But as far as a neonatal ICU, when you're a neonatal nurse practitioner, you go to many deliveries. You get called for deliveries that are either high risk or the baby's going to have problems when they come out, or they need a pediatrician there to help out when the baby comes out. So I have seen thousands of births, and every single birth is amazing. It never gets boring, and it's just you can call it a miracle. It's just science, the body working, but it is just every single birth is just unbelievable. And at one year, we had this is when IVF was big. We had quintuplets. So I was present at the birth of. Lots of us were present at the birth of these five babies delivered by C-section from this mother, and it was a circus. I mean, we had two ORs open. There was two nurses for every baby, so there's 10 nurses. There's respiratory therapists, there's surgeons, and all the babies came out great. It was truly a spectacular event.
Wow,
So
I was just about to ask you, um, how were the health of the babies and how was the health of the mother, but it just for everything to come out great, that's amazing.
it is. Yep, it
Five?
was five. Yep, it was a well orchestrated delivery, certainly. But yeah, the mother did a good job carrying. I don't remember. They obviously were quite premature, and I don't remember how premature they were. But they all came out and did well, at least initially. That's a happy event, definitely.
So thinking about being a nurse practitioner in pediatric care and thinking about the concerns that parents come in with coming into that unit with their small child, what are some of the best practices and things that you can share with our caregiver family?
Well, in pediatrics, my biggest takeaway from working in pediatrics is that kids are far more resilient than we give them credit for. I've worked with many, many, many chronically ill kids. I really enjoyed working with chronically ill kids because they had an amazing attitude, they had amazing resilience. Um, I worked with one child who had chronic kidney disease, and so he was coming in for dialysis every other day. And this is in New York, and his mother would bring him in. And his social life was the nurses and the doctors and the trip in and the trip out. And um, he was brave. He was had great humor. Um, Mr. Rogers came and visited him. So he's an example, but most of the kids who are chronic, that's what they know. That's their life, is in and out of the hospital and with other sick kids. Um, Not always in pain, but certainly there is pain involved. But it's just a different attitude. Adults would be whining 5 times more than most of the kids are, and the kids just learn to live with it. And they take the cue largely from their parents, and the parents encourage them to be resilient. As a parent, it doesn't, both for sick kids and for healthy kids, it really doesn't serve our children well to hover over them and do everything for them and make it so that life is easy for them. That doesn't really do them any service. And so obviously with sick child, you do want to do that stuff to help them. You hate to see them suffering, but they really are pretty good at doing it themselves. They really are. And it's harder for the parent because the parent knows, for instance, a child who may not live beyond even to the age of 20 or beyond that. And the parent says, oh, is he going to be able to graduate from high school? Is he ever going to get married, or she? But the kid doesn't think of that. That is not in their awareness. They just know their life as it is now. And the more that we can do to make it positive at that time and not think about what they're missing, because they're not thinking about what they're going to be missing because they don't know what they're going to be missing. Does that make sense?
It's what I'm hearing you say for the Caregiver podcast family is to really focus on the present moment.
Absolutely.
Versus thinking about the future and what life will look like for your child 10 years down the road, but to really focus on the present, because children do a great job at focusing on the present.
Absolutely.
Whereas adults, happens with us, and we, at some point in life, we forget how to do that, and we just get channel focused on the future, and we lose the ability to stay focused on the present.
Yep, you're right. And kids are much better at that than we are. They are.
But what I'm hearing you say is, in a situation like that, even with dealing with chronic illness in children, don't be afraid to focus on the present. And if you're feeling lost, allow them to guide you, because
Yeah.
children are excellent at that.
You're exactly right, Talisa. That's exactly right.
Parents coming into the hospital with their child who is ill, what are some of the things that, if you could tell them beforehand, they're coming in, their mind may be in a different space, what are some encouraging words or some best practices that you can share with them?
I would tell, and I speak as a mother and a nurse. I don't speak from a father's perspective, obviously, but for mothers, I think that mothers often have really good intuition, have gut instinct, especially about their kids. And the doctors know more medically. And so you certainly want to listen to them about what they're saying medically. But sometimes there can be differences of opinion, or you may not feel exactly right about what the doctor's saying eventually. I mean, initially it's so overwhelming. You just take in what the doctors are saying. You're saying, okay, yes, 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 yes. But then as you sort of get comfortable around it, it's really important to listen to your intuition and what your gut is telling you about your kid, because nobody knows your child as well as you. Yes, the doctors know the medicine, but nobody knows your child as well as you do. And it's your job to advocate for your child, because they can't speak up for themselves. Well, sometimes they can, but they need an adult to advocate for them and speak up for what you think is best for your child. And sometimes that can get to be a little bit tricky, and you may not always win if there's an argument or something, but knowing that you're doing the best you can for what you think your child needs is the best you can do.
That's great that you said that. It made me think about when my mother was in the hospital. I'm the type of person that I'm like, okay, I only get so much time with the doctor, I only get so much time with the nurse staff. So I would listen to what they said, what's going on with my mother, and then I would do my own research. And I mean, this is before we had, of course, the chat GPTs and all of this AI. And so sometimes you could get stuck in a rabbit hole with Google.
Yeah.
Don't go down a deep rabbit hole with Google.
No.
You can leverage the tools that you have around you and on your phone to take a deeper dive. So then that way you can have a productive conversation, more of an educated conversation with the staff, with the doctors, with the nurses, and you can ask them questions based upon what you've learned. For an example, I did that, and what I found when I did some research and I was talking with the doctors, what I found is I felt like the doctors actually gave me more of their time answering questions.
Yeah.
And although I was very emotional, I had to separate my emotion just so that I could have detailed, analytical type of conversations with the doctors. And that I felt like they really heard me and really gave me their time.
That's a very good point. Yeah, and there's two things that came to mind when you were just talking. One is that we often tell parents it's hard to come up with all your questions in the moment when you only have, like you say, a few minutes with the doctor, but when you're not in that situation, to write down your questions and bring them in, so that you don't forget them, and you can always have whatever you are asking about can be addressed. And the other thing that I was just thinking about is also, like you say, about educating yourself. If they're also, again, I'm talking from a parental pediatric standpoint, but if you have, oftentimes parents get together and talk and they compare notes, and they sometimes there are support groups depending on what the illness is, or just chatting in the coffee room can be really supportive for one thing, but also informative, so that you feel a little bit more informed about your child's condition or situation, or what they're missing at school, what the other parents are doing about schoolwork. There's a lot of support systems usually with other parents.
That's great that you mentioned that, because I believe that, it comes to a point in life where we all need support.
Yeah.
And if you're dealing with something like an illness, chronic illness with your child, then you need support as well, because you're supporting your child, but you'll need to surround yourself in a community where you can receive support as well. So that's good to know. Regarding the different types of support systems, how would a parent find this out? Is this available through the hospital? Like, who would they talk to within the hospital to get the ball rolling?
Probably a social worker. Most every child has a social worker assigned to them, and they're the first, or the nurses. But I would say the nurses are really busy. Not the social workers aren't, but that's the social worker's job, is to support the parents, and they can offer. They usually have lists of community organizations that are supportive, but also within the hospital. So that's probably where to start. And then, depending on how long your child's in the hospital, just by being around and seeing who your neighbor is, or your roommate, or whatever, would be the other way, is just to see who comes around. But the social worker would be the first person that I would suggest.
That's great. Podcast family, if this applies to you, make sure to have a detailed conversation with the social worker when you meet the social worker. In addition to that, if you're the type of person who needs to take notes because a lot can be going on, go ahead and take notes. Bring a notebook or use your smartphone. Nowadays, there's a little notebook app on all of the phones. Leverage that. Write down your thoughts and some notes, and or some things that you may want to look into later that maybe you didn't quite understand. And
Yeah,
then
that's
leverage the tools.
that is a good point, because it's very overwhelming. It's so overwhelming, all the information that comes at you, and the environment, and so you're right. If you just can put it on your phone, then that puts it in your phone, and you don't have to worry about it, whether to have it floating around in your head, and are you going to remember it.
As a mother and a nurse practitioner, how would you define making sure that your child has the best care?
The best care is the best care, which is the best care, I would say, is care that is in alignment with your wishes. And if you're speaking up for your child, then you best alignment for your child's care. For instance, well, I'm thinking of sort of end of life, for just for adults. Doctors are trained to keep people alive. And so if you have a loved one who is towards the end of their life and really do not want to continue fighting for their life, the very best of care for that person would be to the doctor listen to what the wishes are for the older person who's perhaps close to dying. So for a child, the very best of care is whatever is in alignment with your wishes for your child, and that the doctor honors that the best that they possibly can. Support, emotional support, and yeah, caring and support, and people. So support is a big word, but so people around you, and caring people, and honoring what your wishes are. And like I say, not every your wishes may not be the same as my wishes for how I want things to go for my child's care. Everyone's different. We're all individuals.
How important would you say it is to include your child's thoughts and desires about their care in that type of a situation?
I think it's very dependent on the child. And you could even say, well, if they're at this certain age, they should be able to handle it. But no, every child is different. And again, the parent knows the best, what the child can handle. I would say, though, when they're young, they don't need, I would not burden my child with making decisions when they don't really know. So it's very age dependent and it's very individual child deployment. I wouldn't hide. It depends. Maybe I would hide things from them and be the one that I'm the one that's making the decision, and that's what stands, and not the child making the decision. A 16-year-old is different. A 16-year-old should definitely have say in his or her care. 12-year-old, maybe not. It could be a mature 12-year-old. It could be not a mature 12-year-old. So it's variable. It varies.
So it sounds like it goes right back to what you said earlier, which is advocating and really trusting your gut as that parent who has the experience with your child. Would you agree
Totally.
with that?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
In terms of any other type of like knowledge or advice that you could give to a parent that's walking into the NICU for the first time with their child, if you had to give them 5 tips, what would that be?
Well, if you're going into the NICU, the baby is in the unit and you're walking to see the baby. And I would say, for the first time, because it's very, very overwhelming. Although they've gotten better, they've gotten quieter and a little less chaotic, but still, it's an intensive care unit and there's emergencies going on all the time. So to try to just focus on where you're going and on your child, maybe with whoever you're with, and try to block out all of that other stuff going on around you and just focus on you and your baby, which is what counts. And I would certainly say to make sure that you have early on a conversation with a physician or the nurse. The nurses are probably more available and they really know what's going on with the babies, probably better than the doctors. And a lot of the times there's a primary nurse who is the one who's going to be taking care of your baby for the whole time. So to establish a rapport with them and try to get comfortable with them and make your wishes known to them, sort of, yeah, be like try to create a team, try to come across with a team approach that you and the doctor, you and the nurse are all on a team to help your baby. Something else would probably be, yeah, talking to whoever you have with you, whether it's a spouse or a partner or a parent or not another child. They shouldn't bear the brunt of that, but somebody close to you who you can talk to, who you can cry with, cry to. Don't feel like you have to be emotionless or that you have to hold it all together. There's many tears that are shed in the NICU, and everybody there most everybody is very, very caring, and that's their not their expertise, but that's part of the whole job, is to be compassionate and caring for the parents. So let it out, let it ask for help. Say that you need somebody's shoulders to cry on, or whatever it is that you need. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
When the parent asks for help, if they're crying, would you say that they embrace that, they welcome that, and they really show up for the parent?
Oh yeah. Well, again, everybody's different, and it's not a blanket statement that yes, all nurses are warm and fuzzy and compassionate, not at all. But certainly when you're working with babies and if you're working in intensive care, you're prepared for tears. I mean, there's a lot of heartbreak, and it does come with the territory. And some nurses are better than others, but they're all, I just can't believe that people just don't have a heart for somebody who is, crying over their sick child. I find them all to be very, very compassionate and patient and caring, even in the midst of all of the chaos that's going on around them in the intensive care nursery. Um, there's always time for compassion and care and a hug.
Okay. Now, what about the energy of the parent when they are visiting their baby in the NICU? Would you recommend that they try to have like a spirit of peace and calm? Do you think that helps the baby?
That's a very interesting question, and I absolutely think it helps the baby. I think that the babies feel the energy when they're in utero, and your tone of voice, your heart, how fast your heartbeat is going, and that carries through into childhood too. Kids pick up on parents' energy. So the more calm that you can be and loving to your baby, even if you're scared to death, um, if you can transmit that and you don't have to work hard to transmit it. Babies pick up and kids pick up parents' energy really, really well. So trying to fake it or hide it is not always going to work so well because they can sense it. So yes, an energy of calm and yeah, and love. Good way to go. Try not to be, and it's hard. It's easy to say, and it's not so easy to do. To not be. Of course, you're going to be stressed and anxious, and if you can just sort of try to leave that at the door, at least when you're coming in contact with your baby, it'll help them so much. It really will help them. Makes a difference.
Okay, awesome. Would you also say, even within this specific type of scenario, staying present is important? How important is staying present versus having your mind on future outcomes?
Yeah, it's important, but of course you can't help but wonder what the outcome is going to be, and so which is the most stressful part of it, is because no doctor is going to tell you what the outcome is. There's no crystal ball on what happens there. So you're just, when you worry, there's a saying, when you worry, you suffer twice. You suffer worrying about what might happen, and then if it does happen, you suffer again. And if it doesn't happen, then you suffer through that worrying for no good reason. So worrying is, again, much easier said than done, but it doesn't do you any good. So staying in the present moment and appreciating what you've got, appreciating the little touch of the hand or the cuteness or the smell of the baby or whatever, those little things, soak those up, because those are what are important, because you can't control the future and nobody can tell you what the future holds. And it's hard. Of course you want to know, but nobody can tell you.
Okay, that's all great information that you've been able to share. What are some things that you have seen that you would like advise against?
In terms of like taking control of their kids, or yeah.
Yes, getting in the way, maybe not letting them feed themselves if they're able to
Oh,
feed themselves.
right. Yeah, no, you want to certainly encourage independence, whatever that is at that particular age, and it gives them a positive feeling of themselves, if they can succeed at feeding themselves or at not crying when they get the needle stuck in them for the blood, or crying and they still do okay with the blood drawing. Letting them experience life or experience the hospital or experience the doctor's appointment in their way, and they take it in and they experience it in their way, and it's not meant to be your way. As much as you want to protect them and help make them not get hurt, they need to experience it all in their way, and they'll process things in their own way. And if you're there as a support and you let them know that they're safe and that you're there, but that you let them experience things the way that they're going to, it makes them feel better about themselves. It makes them feel like they have a say in things, that they've got some autonomy. And again, this is really varies from age to age, but overall, I think that it applies to all ages, to everybody.
Okay, that's great. When dealing with the overwhelmed parent, if you were able to spend like 30 seconds with an overwhelmed parent, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that you got to take care of yourself first. You're gonna if you're chronically overwhelmed. I'm a big believer that stress is the basis of many illnesses and diseases. So overwhelm is way too much stress. So if your body is telling you that you're overwhelmed, it's time to back away. You have to take care of yourself. There's a saying, you put your own oxygen mask on first, and then you put it on your child's or whoever you're with. And there's a lot to that. It's very true. And I know that I've seen it. The parents are just, they can't they can't give themselves time away from being with their baby, because you just feel like it's your responsibility. You just want to know exactly what's going on. But if you get overwhelmed, it's doing nobody any good. It's definitely not doing you good. And if you get sick, then where's your child going to be when they need you? If you're just too overwhelmed and too stressed. So um, good sleep. Make sure that you sleep. And again, I understand this is much easier said than done, but still, it's good to be aware of it. Good sleep, good nutrition. Um, don't exist on caffeine all the time because eventually you're going to crash. Good sleep, good nutrition, some exercise, some movement. And it sounds like really, yeah, of course, Julie. But really, people say it because it really makes a difference. And try to, so I guess they're all self care kind of things, but try to make sure that you add some time for yourself in the day, whether it's going out and walking around the block and getting some fresh air for 30 minutes. To clear your head, that can make a big difference. If you can just be aware of what your body is telling you, like, I feel really overwhelmed, as you said, then you need to step back and try to take care of yourself. And there's always should be a way that no mother is completely indispensable, or no caregiver is 100% indispensable. There's always somebody that can fill in for you just for a few minutes. You're not completely indispensable. So find somebody to help you out, relieve you, give you some time to yourself, whether it's a good night's sleep or, like I say, a walk around the block or whatever it is. You got to take care of yourself. And mothers aren't really good at that. They always take care of their children
Right.
long before their kids.
I was sitting here thinking, oh my God, mothers, they don't do that. There's a level of guilt
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that they feel, especially if something's going on with their child, especially if their child is in an NICU. But it's very important because, to your point, in order to be there for your child, you must first be there for yourself.
Yep.
And or else you won't have anything to give. And so making sure that you can take the time, and also leveraging community
Mm-hmm.
around you, understanding that you're not alone, understanding that the people who are in your space who sincerely love and care about you will make time for you and will be there for you so that
Yep.
you can take a nap, so that you can make sure you have a balanced meal because your body needs that. That's really great. And it's also very interesting because we really don't hear that very often in terms of like caregiving as it pertains to parents taking care of children and being in a situation where they are in the NICU or the pediatric part of the hospital and they're dealing with it. You don't really hear people say, hey, you got to put yourself first, or you take care of yourself and make sure. You don't hear that because the focus is always on the
On the
child. So it's
child.
great that right. It's great that you said that because we're all connected and that all ties in too. And in
Yep.
order to be there, y'all, I hope y'all are hearing this podcast family because in order to really be there for your baby, it's vital, it's imperative that you're able to replenish yourself as well.
Yep. Doesn't do any good
So
to run
wow,
on
thank you for
empty.
that.
Yep.
Yes, yes. So podcast family, I do have some exciting news about Julie Hatch. She's also a published author, and she has a new book out. I wanted to change gears and just talk about that and hear more about her book. So please tell me about your book, and also not only that, but thinking about, well, I don't want to get too much away because I want you to tell us about it, but how did you end up writing the book? What led you to it?
So it's a medical thriller, and it's completely fiction, but my ideas came from my time working in the NICU. And the idea came um, when I was working in the 90s. The medicine of neonatology, premature babies, was exploding because IVF was coming along. They had new medications. They were able to save babies younger and sooner. So it was super, super busy. And intensive care nurseries were growing and they were bursting at the seams. They were building newer and bigger ones. So it was a really exciting time to be in that field. And but I do remember sometimes it was just too crazy and it was extremely stressful a lot of the time. And I remember saying to one of my colleagues, I said, "Jeepers, what are they doing? Is so and so?" I listed the name of the VP of nursing. I said, "What is she doing? Is she going outside and dragging in pregnant women and making them deliver?" And we all like, "Yeah, that's funny." So then 20 years later, I thought that's kind of a good idea for a medical thriller. So it's based on that conversation of, wow, what if they came in and made mothers deliver prematurely? So that's where it came from. And some of the stories or parts of the plot or parts of the story are very close to real stories. Not completely because it is fiction, but that's where they all came from.
That's awesome. So your book is entitled The Very Best of Care.
Hmm.
And you're stating that within the book, you've been able to leverage your background and some interesting stories and concepts that came from that to write your book,
Yes.
right?
Yep. Exactly. And it's pretty realistic. I mean, I lived it for 30 years, so it's pretty realistic. All of the and yeah, I think it was a really fun book to write, and it's been received quite well. So I'm excited to have it out there. It's been out for about 3 weeks now.
Okay, yes. We are excited here in the caregiving space as well because as I was talking to Julie, we were talking about her book that just came out and how exciting it is because we all look for a way to just kind of escape, whether it's just watching your favorite TV show, going for a walk, etc. I know even on vacation, I have a good book to read because it allows me to travel somewhere different.
Hmm.
And every time I read, I'm an avid reader. So every time I read, it's like I'm in the room and I'm watching everything as everything is unfolding. It's just like watching TV. We all need to just be able to take a break sometime
Yep.
from life and from caregiving, from all of the responsibilities that we have. And so, with the book that Julie Hatch has written, it allows you to do just that. It's a fictional nursing type thriller, medical thriller,
Hmm.
and it allows you to escape the monotony of just the everyday and even the stress that you may incur from caregiving. Something like that is actually very healthy for you, and it also coincides with our conversation that we had about putting yourself first. Because
Yeah.
when you put yourself first, that means that you're caring for yourself and you're doing something that brings you joy, brings you peace, helps to center you. We often talk about journaling here, and you've heard me say that a lot: journal, journal, journal. But another big part of it is just being able to read, that take your mind away. And I'll share this with you. So back in the day, when I was in high school, every day we had something called SSR, which was sustained silent reading. And we would have this for, I believe this must have been like our third or fourth hour. And everyone in our whole school, we would have to read. So that's when I started really reading books outside of the literature from school. I started buying my own books because I'm like, they're going to make me read something. I might as well get a book or something I may want to check out. But within that time, what ended up happening and what I learned from that is I can set aside 15 minutes for myself to just read a book and really get deep within it. It became a pleasure and it's something that I have continued to carry with me throughout my life. So, with your book, that's something that I sincerely recommend for you all, especially my caregiving family, because you can get started reading every 15 minutes, just 15 minutes a day. And because it's so captivating, you have to understand that she has been a nurse practitioner for over 30 years. So being able to really create a medical thriller and tapping into her insight and then being creative as Julie is, this is a great book to read. This could actually provide you with that personal time that you need to focus on yourself and to help get away and provide yourself with just some energy here. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that.
I think that's wonderful that you talk about how you enjoy reading so much because you can escape. You can totally escape and immerse yourself in the world of whatever you're reading about, even if it's only for 15 minutes. And that can be really, that can be therapy. That's great for you to bring that up. So the book is available on everywhere. You can go to any bookstore and ask them to order it, or so it's certainly on at Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Goodreads and my website, which is juliehatchbooks.com. But it is available. The little indie bookstores, you would have to ask for them to order it, but they can order it. It's available.
Okay, and podcast family, I hope that you heard her, and I'm going to have Julie repeat that again. What is your website?
juliehatchbooks.com. I
So
have another website too. I used to be a
yes,
parenting
please.
coach. So I have stuff about kids on my other website, which is juliephillipshatch.com. And I don't mean to confuse things, so you don't have to add that if you don't want. juliehatchbooks.com is where the book is.
You know what? I would love to add both. I'm going to add both because, just like I said, your wealth of knowledge and experience that you have, understanding that the caregiving space is a pretty ambiguous space. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it encompasses a lot of different people that are on various journeys,
Mm-hmm.
unique journeys.
Yeah.
And one shoe size doesn't fit all. You know, you have some that are taking care of parents, whereas you have some who are taking care of chronically ill children or neurodivergent
Yeah.
children. So anything that can help the caregiver community, I am 100% about. So we'll have both of the sites listed in the description. Can you tell me more about what you do for children and how you provide parents with materials to help their children?
Well, I did a podcast for a period of time, not very long. I love doing it. I love talking about kids, not just medically, but also just raising kids. So there are podcast episodes on that website. And I wrote a blog. I wrote several blogs on that. So there's a lot of information about not just medical, but just kids, social, psychosocial. Psychosocial is big in my book for kids. And there are definitely some podcast episodes about for caregivers for kids. Um, so it covers, and I wrote a thing about COVID and how it affects kids, and so it's a whole wide range of topics. It was a few years ago that I did it, but I loved it. So that's a good. I like that website. Julie Hash Books is good for the book.
Got it. So, podcast family, I am going to make sure I stated that I have that information in the description of this episode, and I ask that you check out both because, like I said, one size does not fit all, and I'm sure that there are people that are a part of our caregiving family here, podcast family, that will find this to be just very beneficial for them, as well as helping them in terms of where they are on their journey as a parent. Knowledge truly is power.
Mhm.
And in order to really learn, we have to seek it out. We're providing these resources here, this website for you to access for you whenever you're ready to do so. And I do want you all again to make sure you purchase Julie Hatch's book, her medical thriller, because you won't be disappointed. It's going to be a wonderful read for you. Whenever I have someone that comes onto my podcast and they're full of just knowledge and wisdom, and then they're creative and they develop things for people, is there anything else that you would like to share with the podcast family on today?
Well, I would say since this is caregivers, your podcast family are caregivers. Um, Take care of yourself, caregive to yourself first, and then caregive to everybody else, especially you mothers out there. We're terrible at doing that, but it's super important.
Thank you
Yep.
so much for that, Julie Hatch, and thank you again for being a guest on Mama Mabel's Caregivers podcast. I really enjoyed having you on today.
Thank you, Talisa. I really enjoyed it as well. Thank you very much for having me.